Hi guys, my name is Christy and today I'm going to show you how to create a 100% edible holiday cracker. The first thing that you're going to need is a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll that's been cut in half. Then take a piece of parchment paper and wrap it around your tube, securing it at both ends with tape. To save yourself some time, I recommend making 2 of these formers because you will need one to make the center piece of your cracker and you will need to make one to make the outside pieces of your cracker. Once you've created your tube, it's time to roll out your modeling chocolate. To make sure that you roll your modeling chocolate out to an even thickness, I recommend using pastry rulers. My pastry rulers I got from Country Kitchen Sweetheart, and it comes with 3 different sizes. The size that I'm using for this is 1/16 inch thickness. If you're not using pastry rulers, try to roll your modeling chocolate out to 1/16 of an inch. Rolling your chocolate out too thick will result in you not having enough room on the inside of your cracker to put all the fun stuff that you want. Rolling it out too thin will result in not enough stability on the outside of the cracker. So 1/16 of an inch really is the perfect size. Now the modeling chocolate that I'm using is Satin Ice Bright White. I'm using Satin Ice modeling chocolate because I really like the workability. You can make your own modeling chocolate if you want, however, using corn syrup and candy melts. You'll notice that I'm also rolling out my chocolate on a Cel Board and I'm not using any cornstarch or powdered sugar. And that's because I'm trying to make sure that my chocolate does not get less sticky. You actually want a little bit of tackiness and you want your chocolate to be a little bit sticky because it does help it stay attached to the roll while it's forming. Once your modeling chocolate has been rolled to 1/16 of an inch, go ahead and use a poly blade to cut it to size. Once your modeling chocolate has been cut to the correct size, go ahead and roll it up onto your parchment covered tube. Cut off the excess modeling chocolate with an Xacto Blade. You want to make sure that you don't cut your chocolate too short and that you actually leave about 1/8 of an inch extra, because when you're pressing your chocolate down, your chocolate is actually going to get a little bit thinner and you want to make sure that it's still structurally sound along your line. Once you have your chocolate on your tube, go ahead and use a poly blade to cut your tube. You want to cut about 3/4 of the way because you want to make sure that when your tube breaks, one section will be bigger and one section will be smaller. The person with the bigger section is the one that's supposed to keep all the stuff inside of the tube. Once you have your main tube constructed, you can go ahead and place it in your freezer while you construct the ends. To make the end pieces of your cracker, you'll follow the same process that you did to make the centerpiece. Once you have your chocolate rolled on your tube, go ahead and use a poly blade to cut in the exact center of your modeling chocolate. Once you've made a cut all the way around the tube, peel your tape strips back and pull the tube out from your parchment. Once you get the tube out, go ahead and remove your parchment paper as well. Once your parchment paper is removed, you should have two equally sized modeling chocolate tubes. We're going to use these as the ends. To create the end pieces of your cracker, you're going to pinch the ends of your modeling chocolate into a tapered end. Your end goal for this is to try to create a plus sign so that you have enough surface area that your chocolate will stick to it and hold, and that it won't fall apart. Once you have the end of your cracker tapered to where you'd like it, go ahead and turn your cracker over and press it against your board. You want to make sure that you have a nice flat surface for that chocolate to attach to. Repeat the process with the other end. Once all your tubes are formed, go ahead and place them in the freezer. It's very important not to skip this step. While your tubes are in the freezer, go ahead and melt 8 ounces of white candy melts and 1 tablespoon of shortening. You're adding the shortening to make sure that your candy melts are a little bit more liquidy than normal. You don't want them to be super thick because you want to make sure that it's just a very thin coat on the inside of your modeling chocolate tube. Too thick of a coat will again result in not enough space on the inside of your tube for you to put all that fun stuff. Once your tubes are frozen and your chocolate is melted, we're going to go ahead and put the chocolate on the inside. So I'm working on a frozen sheet tray with tubes that I just pulled out of the freezer, and you're just going to go ahead and use a offset spatula to put your chocolate on the inside of your tube. Again, just a very light coating. You'll notice that the tubes that I'm working with also have some grooves on the end on one section, and that was just to see if having those little triangle grooves would help with lining it up, if it would stay together easier. It does not. You can just do one straight line. And don't worry about the inside of your tube looking super clean. It's not very important. Once you stuff all the goodies inside, nobody's going to be looking at the inside of the tube, because the star of the show is really the outside and all the fun stuff on the inside that comes out once you pop it open. After you finish lining the inside of your tubes with chocolate, go ahead and take a piece of parchment paper and put it down on your sheet tray. Now again, remembering that we're working with a frozen sheet tray, we're going to go ahead and pour in some of our candy melts into the bottom. This is going to create the base of our topper that the ends of the cracker are going to attach to. Once you've poured your chocolate in, go ahead and tamp your tray down, and use an offset spatula to make sure your chocolate is attached. If you need to, add some more candy melts. Now that you have the inside of your tube lined with chocolate, you also want to line the inside of your ends with the chocolate. Use an offset spatula and try to keep the edges as clean as possible. Once you've finished lining all the ends and tubes with chocolate, freeze the tubes to make sure that they are completely set for your next step. To attach your end pieces to your main tube, dip the end piece into your melted candy melt and attach it onto the tube. Make sure that it's centered, and when it lays down on its side, that it isn't uneven and it won't roll. Once your tube and end piece are set, you can apply a little bit more chocolate to make sure it's more structurally sound. Once you're done with this step, go ahead and place your tubes in the freezer until you're ready to wrap them up. No holiday cracker is complete without a hat. So to make our hat, we're going to use wafer paper and Xacto. For this hat, I'm using Icing Images blue wafer paper that I've already cut to size. Next, go ahead and take your Xacto and brush it over your wafer paper. You want to make sure that you brush it on both sides. To attach the second piece of your hat, after you've already done one coat of Xacto on one side, flip it over and place it down onto your other piece of wafer paper. Those two pieces will remain stuck together and will not come apart once they dry. Now that our wafer paper is dry enough to pull off our Silpat, it's time to finish our hat. And for this, I'm using Xacto glue. You can absolutely just use regular Xacto, but since I have Xacto glue on hand, that's what I'm going to use. You'll also notice that I'm using a piece of parchment paper in between, and that's just to make sure that if there's any excess glue or Xacto that seeps through, it's not going to make sure that my hat is completely stuck together in the center as well. So just brush a very light coating of your Xacto glue or your Xacto along the end of your wafer paper, and then go ahead and line it up. Press firmly along the seam, and then go ahead and weight it down. Allow the hat to dry for at least 1 hour. To create the wrapping for our cracker, we're going to use Icing Images Flex Frost. I used the pearl and the silver, and I printed out some Icing Images iDesigns patterns out onto them using my edible image printer. You can use an edible image printer to print your designs, or you can also order the prints directly from Icing Images. The patterns that I used were number 48, number 267, and number 268. Peel your Flex Frost off the protective backing and place it onto a Silpat. Next, use Xacto over the top of your Flex Frost. You want to make sure that you don't go over the same section more than once and that you work very quickly. Flex Ink will melt your design off if you do not work quickly enough and you go over the same spot more than once. Once you finish painting your Flex Frost with your Flex Ink, set it aside to dry for at least 2 to 3 hours. Now that we have all of our pieces constructed, it's time to put our cracker together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take some piping gel and a paintbrush and completely cover the outside of your cracker as well as the inside of your cracker ends. Not the inside of your tube, the inside of the ends. Now that the outside of our tube is completely covered in piping gel, we're going to take all of the fun stuff that we're going to put in our tube and roll it all up. So first roll up your hat, and then once your hat is nice and rolled up, you're going to take your joke and wrap that around your hat. Most Christmas crackers come with a super corny joke or a pun. My joke is printed on wafer paper. Keep in mind that you do want to be able to fit a bunch of sprinkles in there as well, so try to roll it as tight as you can. Then fill all the rest of your area inside the cracker with sprinkles. The sprinkle mix that I'm using for these crackers is my own Cakes by Christie Snowflake Ornament Mix that I created using Satin Ice fondant. You can find this mix in my Etsy shop. Once you've filled your cracker, you're going to go ahead and take a little bit more of your melted candy melts and you're going to dip your unfilled cracker end in, making sure to rub your finger around on the inside to make sure there's no melted chocolate that's going to stick to your sprinkles or hat, and then you're going to go ahead and stick it right on top of your other half. Use your fingers to go ahead and smooth the melted chocolate that's on the end all the way around the edge. That melted chocolate is going to act as a little seal. Make sure that when you're assembling your tube that you lay it down on its side so that you know that it is even all the way around, that there's no weird little gaps anywhere, and that it looks completely straight. Once your tube is completely sealed, go ahead and wrap it in parchment and set it aside while you work on your other crackers if you're making any others. All of our tubes are assembled and now it's time to wrap them up. Before you start, make sure that your Flex Frost design is face down on your table so that is going to be the outside wrapping of your tube. Next, unwrap your tube from your parchment paper and brush some piping gel over the areas that you put melted chocolate over. Those parts will not be sticky from the earlier piping gel that you applied. Once you've finished applying piping gel to your tube, place your cracker at the bottom center of your Flex Frost sheet. You want to make sure that you have excess Flex Frost coming off on both sides. Carefully roll your Flex Frost sheet over your tube, making sure to keep any air bubbles out. If you need to, cut off any excess Flex Frost. I cut off about 2 inches of Flex Frost before wrapping up my tube. Fold your Flex Frost ends into the ends of the cracker. You don't have to make sure these are perfect because this is actually just to make sure that it's secure while you cut the end off. Once your cracker is fully encased in your wrapping, go ahead and take some scissors and cut along the seam for where your tube and your end are attached. Then fold the edges of your Flex Frost over. Add more piping gel if you need to make sure that everything stays attached. The reason that we cut the flex frost at the section that we do is because when you wrap your ribbon around it, you want to make sure that there is still kind of an indent, that it looks like the tube is separate from your ends. And if you don't cut your flex frost, it just does not give that appearance. If you need to, peel away the end flex frost and move it down slightly, making sure that the crease is lined up with the tube crease, and that when you're wrapping your flex frost, all the ends stay down. If you need to add more piping gel, please do. Repeat the process on both sides. Now that our whole tube is completely wrapped, it's time to add the center wrapping piece. This piece is very, very important because it covers up your seam and also allows you to hide where your cracker will break. The most important part about applying this specific wrapping part is that you want to make sure to apply piping gel only to half. If you apply your piping gel to the whole thing, it's going to be very, very hard to open up your cracker. You want to make sure that you're putting the piping gel covered part of the wrapping paper on the section of the tube that is the longer section. Now it's hard to tell from the video which section is longer, but when you're making your tubes, you will be able to feel that crease. So you'll know where to put your center piece of wrapping. To create the ribbon, take some of your excess flex frost and cut very thin strips. I cut them at about 1/4 inch thick. To attach the ribbon, we're going to use some more piping gel. So just go ahead and paint the inside of that crease and go ahead and wrap your ribbon around. You want to make sure that the ends of your ribbon are going to be hidden by your bow. And to make the bow, I just used one of my ribbon strips and created 2 simple loops and then wrapped my piece of flex frost around to create one tail, cut the strip, and then added that extra strip on as the other tail piece. And again, everything is attached using piping gel. Now, if there's an area on your cracker somewhere that doesn't look very nice, make sure that when you're adding the ribbon that you can cover that section up. And it doesn't have to just be one bow. You can make the bow bigger, you can make it smaller, you can make more loops. Use the flex frost to your advantage. Now, some extra information about opening your crackers. You want to make sure that when you open your cracker, you're pulling from the main tube and not the ends. If you pull from the ends, you will end up with a broken cracker and not in the section you want it to be broken. None of the stuff will come out. You also want to make sure when you're opening these crackers that you're in an area where it's okay if a few sprinkles get on the floor. Now, you may have been wondering why you're only supposed to put piping gel on half of your outside flex frost sheet, and this is why. If you put it on the entire sheet, it's completely bonded to your first layer of flex frost, which makes it really hard to pull apart. And of course, don't forget to wear your hat. And eat it too. And that's it, guys. That's how you create a 100% edible holiday cracker. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial, and thank you so much for watching.